I'm originally a farm kid from Iowa, so I come to Albert Lea Seed with that background. I cut my teeth in the seed business almost 27 years ago, and I've done a number of interesting things throughout my career that took me out of the seed business, kept me in ag. I'm now back in the seed business, and just I love this industry and I love this business. So I'm glad to be here with you today. As Ty mentioned, I joined last August, and during this conference last year, I was a participant watching, and I'm just excited the chance to actually speak to you today. And I'd like to start off by thanking you. For those of you that are customers or dealers, I want to thank you very much for your business. Without your business, we couldn't do the things we do every day. We're actually having a really good sales year as we look at the corn, soy, and alfalfa that we've booked for next crop year. We're doing quite well relative to a year ago. Prepays are up. We're really excited about that. And so, again, thank you for your business. Also want to thank you for spending your time with us today. There's lots of places you could spend your time, and you chose to spend it with us, and we don't take that lightly. So thank you for that. So as Ty alluded to, I'm going to share with you some of the work, preliminary work that we've done around better understanding these biologicals. And so my talking points today, I'm going to briefly outline for you some of the work that we've started as Albert Lea Seed House just this last growing season. So I'm going to share with you what we're trying to do and how we're going about doing it. Then I'm going to give you some preliminary findings with the caveat that it's 1 year. We don't have as much data as we'd like to have after 1 year. And so I'm going to show you preliminarily how things look. I'm not going to make any recommendations. I'm actually going to cloak the treatments themselves and how they did, because it's too early to start making recommendations around what products we think make sense. We're coming at this from the standpoint that we think it's a multi-year, multi-state, multi-hybrid approach to really identifying the best products. So I'm going to tease you a little bit at the end with some preliminary results, but you're not going to see the products, with one exception. So I apologize for that up front. But I do invite questions, so please ask if you have questions, whether that be through the portal or emailing us. We're always looking for opportunities to improve our work in this area. And then the last thing I'll talk about is BioGuard. BioGuard is actually an example of an OMRI certified with restrictions custom seed treatment that we offered this year on corn. And that window is actually closed as of the 1st of December. But I'm going to share some data with you relative to how that performed from the work that we did, in addition to some work that was done by Alba, the manufacturer, several years leading up to it. So that's the agenda for my presentation. So let's start off with just talking about Project Trusted Insights and what are we trying to achieve. And there's really 4 primary objectives. The first one is we think it's our role as Albert Lea Seed House to try to sort through the myriad of products that are available today that have claims in the biological space. And that's a fairly broad definition. Some of these biologicals address nutritional needs. Some of these biologicals address pathogens. Some of these biologicals attempt to fix nitrogen. And so it's a really confusing space right now. And my previous job before joining Albert Lea Seed House, I came out of an organization that spent a fair amount of time in this space. And I actually see enormous value, more value in the organic market for the organic grower for these biologicals than I do in the traditional conventional space. And the reason I say that, as organic producers, we don't have as many tools to use. And so if we can find some of these advanced microbials that solve some of those problems, I think we'll create better ROI for the organic producer relative to what the traditional producer could enjoy from these same biologicals. So that's the first objective. The second objective is we're trying to develop insights around not just what we put on the seed, which is what we're going to focus on today, seed treatments, particularly corn, but what else can we be looking at from a systems approach that helps drive yield and address problems that the organic producer faces on his farm. And so we'll in the future undoubtedly test products that don't go on the seed, and or we may not inventory, but we're trying to, again, develop insights as to what's working, maybe what's not working, and then provide that guidance to you all as customers and dealers. Third item, and this is really the primary driver as we get into this work, is what products should we be putting on our seed and providing to you in a bag, so that it's not something that you have to add equipment to your planter or dump something in your box. We want it to come to you on the seed, so it's turnkey. And then the fourth item, we're constantly trying to get better at positioning our products. And we've actually learned some interesting things through this work, kind of by accident, how we think we can apply some of these approaches I'm going to show you around just better understanding how we position our traditional corn and soybean products. So this next slide really is designed to show you the minutia, again, of products that are available today. I touched on this a little bit already. You've got biofertilizers, you've got inoculants, you've got biostimulants, you got biopesticides, growth regulators, semi-chemicals, macrobials as opposed to microbials. And this slide, it's all the logos, frankly, of the organizations that are bringing these products to market. So it's not the products themselves, it's the organizations that are bringing these products. So each one of these organizations has anywhere from one to dozens of products they're trying to introduce. So the work that we did to set up Project Trusted Insights is we spent time with those organizations on this slide that we thought had the best chance of helping us help you all as customers. And then we identified 8 treatments through this preliminary, you could call it an interview process with these manufacturers, to try to find those products that we think had the best shot of fitting our needs. And the specific needs we were looking for, OMRI certified without restrictions is the gold standard, which is really hard to find in this space, but we went into it looking for OMRI certified without restrictions. We wanted something that could go on seed corn in the form of a seed treatment, and we're looking for something that has at least 2 years worth of shelf life. So as you all know, corn can go out to the farm and come back if it doesn't get used, and then we put it in cold storage, and then it can go back out to the farm for a few years before we need to park it. And so we're looking for something that has multiple years of shelf life. So went through this work, identified 8 products in addition to what we normally use, and then we went forward with that. So we chose 2 sites, and we partnered with Encore Genetics, which is an organization that Albert Lea Seed House took an investment in a year ago, and they do several things for us. One of them is field research, where they help us identify those hybrids that we want to move forward with and commercialize. And this is really getting into a lot of the good work that Jake does. And so this slide shows you 2 locations. We went just south of Ames here in central Iowa, where Encore has one base of operations, and they've got one in Dawson, Illinois. And so we went to them with these treatments. The seed was already pre-treated by a disinterested third party. We had one organization that excels at treating seed do all the treatments for us. We chose 2 hybrids, 8404, 4602. We had 10 treatments, one of them being Cruiser Max, which is our standard in the non-GMO conventional space, and then the standard that we use in the organic space with our Rise Up coating. So those are our 2 checks, and then we had 8 different treatments. In addition to that, we handed all that to this third party with these 2 hybrids, 8404, 4602, and then they applied those products same day, same treater, same person, so that we didn't unintentionally introduce bias based on how this corn was treated. They shipped it to Encore, this research company that we partner with. And then Encore placed 2 locations, as I mentioned, one in Ames, Iowa, and then one in Dawson, Illinois. And they had 2 plantings. And so if you look at the Kelly site in this picture, you see experiment 1, early planting. The goal was to plant around the same time that a traditional non-organic grower would plant. And in central Iowa, that would be second half of April. And then come in with the second planting experiment two, what we call the late planting, in a timeline that's more consistent with what a traditional organic grower would do. And so we've got two different dates trying to tease out, are there differences in the performance relative to those two dates? So for those of you that farm in central Iowa, northern Iowa, south central Minnesota, you'll recognize, and even in eastern Illinois, that we were so wet this spring. It was a really difficult spring to get in early. So consequently, our first planting in Kelly was in the middle of May, and our second planting was late May, early June, and the same for the Dawson location, Dawson, Illinois. Unfortunately, we got in later than we wanted to. That was weather driven. And so we didn't quite see what we wanted to see from that standpoint, which kind of goes back to why I don't want to show how specific products did, because we need more years of data to give you a confident nod around which one we think works best. So this is how it was laid out: 2 locations, 2 hybrids, 10 treatments. 2 of those treatments were what we would consider a check or our standard, i.e. Cruiser Max, and then Rise Up. And then this is how the plots are planted. You see it's a bit of a checkerboard concept, where each one of those strips that you see is a actual treatment. And so we randomized and replicated, and from a statistical standpoint, this kind of a process allows you to develop some pretty good data. So that's how we laid it out. And then as we got into it, one of the things that we're keenly interested in, because we constantly hear from our customers that it's of interest in, that is this whole notion of how fast does a corn hybrid get to canopy, and in doing so, outcompete weeds. And so we went into this project really trying to figure out, how can we measure that? How do we measure? We call it speed to canopy. How do we measure speed to canopy? And as we grappled with that question, what we came up with is we need to put a drone in the air and actually take a snapshot, if you will, of that plant, and then watch it over the course of time from emergence to canopy. And so this slide somewhat characterizes that. The picture on the left, if you look closely in the middle, that's a drone. So we actually had a drone flying over a drone that was taking that image that I looked at for the purposes of capturing this picture. So from about V2 until canopy, we flew all of these plots on average every 3 days. And so we gathered around a dozen observations around each one of these plots through this drone, and then we ingested that data into a platform that's designed to really tease out, are these hybrids emerging and getting to canopy at different speeds? And then the next question is, do we believe these treatments are influencing that? And so I'm going to show you a little bit of that information through this presentation. And then on the right, that's our own Jake Hansen out in these plots with his digitized, ruggedized laptop taking field notes. And so we also had Jake in these plots as well, taking a look. So plant the plots, put a drone in the air every 3 days from V2 till emergence, and then we started to ingest that data. And so here's some of the questions we were looking for, and I referenced the second one: are these treatments influencing the speed to canopy? And then the first one was, and this is where one of those ahas that we think makes sense for the broader set of research that Jake leads around which hybrids do we bring to market. Do the hybrids perform differently? And I think if I were to ask any of you or corn farmers, you say, yeah, these hybrids obviously perform differently based on their genetics and their environment. And so that's kind of stating the obvious, but how well do we understand that? And so we went into this work trying to answer those two questions. And what we did see, that absolutely these hybrids behave differently just on the basis of genetics. But these treatments that you see here, so I'm showing you all the treatments right here, they actually do motivate different speed to canopy. which is really interesting. Some do better than others. And so we collected all this data by 4th of July. We had this data available to us, maybe a little earlier than that. And I previewed at our dealer kickoff in August. What we didn't have was the yield data to then overlay the speed to canopy, which I am going to show you that towards the end of the presentation. So when you look at speed to canopy, that's exciting, that's important. We also want to look at obviously yield and then start to stack those two on top of each other and see, does speed to canopy tend to help us get better yield or not? And so we'll share a little bit of that with you later in the presentation. So this slide is just an attempt to show you some of the analysis that we did. So let me unpack it real quick. You can see the Dawson site on the top half of the slide. There's the planting dates, May 17th and May 29th. Again, we had intended the early planting to be probably late April, and then the late planting to be mid to late May. So that late planting is probably about where it needs to be, but that early planting, we didn't get that early enough. And so there's an opportunity next year to hopefully, weather permitting, we can drive that difference a little bit wider. And then the Kelly location is below. If you look at the line graphs to the right, it looks a little confusing at first. So let me explain each one of those lines, and let's focus on the red line, which is the early planting. Each one of those lines is a hybrid and a treatment. And you can see if you look at the vertical or the horizontal axis, there's dates there. And so that first clear to the left in that line graph, that would be the first observation we took with the drone. And we're measuring as the bar gets higher, that's i.e. canopy or speed to canopy. And so this just gives you a sense for how we collected the data. And the red line is the early planting, the gray line is the late planting. And as Jake and I were chewing on this data after we got it, one of the things that, again, I'm kind of stating the obvious here, certain hybrids get to canopy quicker. But when you think about planting date and the differences between early planting and late planting, that's another thing that's pretty interesting when you think about this. That later planted crop obviously gets to canopy quicker than the earlier one given heat. But I don't think we fully appreciated how quickly and how much time you actually shave off of that trip. So for instance, in the Dawson plot, the early planted took 31 days to get to. GCA stands for green cover area. That's code for speed to canopy or canopy. The late planting, we shaved 6 days off that. And if you look at Kelly, we shaved 9 days between those planting from speed to canopy. So kind of get your wheels turning when you think about hybrid selection and getting to canopy. So that's just a little bit of a snippet. This slide, again, kind of showing you how we did the analysis. And now I'm going to start to block stuff out so we don't unintentionally communicate too soon. We're definitely seeing some of these seed treatments motivate a quicker speed to canopy over others. And that is somewhat influenced by the hybrid they're on. But it's quite the question to try to answer with 1 year's worth of data, which is again why we're being a little cautious how much we show. This next slide, what I'd like to draw your attention to is the speed to emergence and canopy, and we're going to focus on 4602, which was a bit of an aha for Jake and I. If you think about that genetic background relative to 8404, we tend to think of 8404 as a little bit quicker out of the ground into canopy. What we saw in this data was a little bit of the opposite. And when it comes to getting to 50% of canopy, we're seeing about a day and a half difference between these two hybrids when you incorporate the treatments, and that's what this slide attempts to share. So with that being said, let's get to the punchline. So here's the results of the Trusted Insights work that we did this year. So again, 2 locations, 2 hybrids, 10 treatments. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the yield response in addition to speed to canopy. And so this bar chart is all the treatments, and again, they're masked. The only one that's in the open is Cruiser Max. Okay, so that's our standard treatment, and it's one. I mean, it's actually an industry-leading treatment for seed corn that we use on our non-GMO conventional products. And the reason I show it is it's very encouraging for us after 1 year of testing that we have this gold standard out there that unfortunately we can't use on a certified organic acre. But a number of these products we can, and Cruiser Max is the middle of the pack. Okay, so there is truly something to be said about these advanced microbials and their ability to help deal with issues that a product like Cruiser Max, which is a very good product, been out there a long time, that we just don't have access to on the organic acre. There's a lot of products out there that can perform very near to maybe even a little bit better. Okay, and so the range 237 was the high, and this data averages by hybrid, by treatment, all those observations, and we had, I think it was 3 reps per product. So we averaged all those, and so we're looking at the hybrids, the locations, and the planting dates, all averaged by treatment. Okay, so we collapsed a lot of this information, which I think is the best way to look at this when you think about trying to find products that work on multiple hybrids, multiple environments, multiple planting dates. This is how we summarize the data. So 237 is the high, 222 is the low. So not a huge delta, 14, 15 bushel. Cruiser Max in the middle at 232 in terms of how they stack up. And then those stars, okay, now let's talk speed to canopy. Based on this year's worth of information, the hybrid or the treatment that motivated the best speed to canopy across all environments also happened to be the treatment that yielded the most. Now, is that cause and effect? Not sure. And then you think about the next one, 3 treatments down. That's another product that from a speed to canopy standpoint was one of the top ones. And there again, that hybrid yielded towards the top. The bar below Cruiser Max with the big red arrow on it, that is the treatment that actually had the slowest speed to canopy. The yield was middle of the pack, a little less than Cruiser Max. And so this is where the data gets really interesting for us as we think about helping solve problems on the farm, the portfolio that we use, the geographies that we're in, and trying to bring all those different facets to bear on finding the right treatment to bring to you in the form of a seed treatment. So I'm going to stop there for just a minute. Ty, you're fielding questions. If there are any, let's take them. Mac, if you want to make a comment, or Jake, if you want to make a comment, now would be a good time to do that.
Yep, I see that Mac has his hand up.
Thanks, Ty. Hey, Brett, thanks for the nice presentation here. I think this is I'll just back up a little bit. You know, I've been in the seed business since 1990, and we started selling organic seed in 98. We started selling organic seed corn when I made friends with Maury Johnson in 2003. And since 2003, I've been looking for the product that would help organic corn get out of the ground faster, not just for more yield, but also for better weed control, because I get it. We get it. We understand how important that is to organic farmers. And so since 2003, we've been looking for products that would help organic corn, and not just organic corn, but other species as well. We're focusing on organic corn in this study, but we're also thinking about how this might affect other species, including cover crops. Anyhow, I've been looking for this since 2003, and honestly, guys, never really found a product that we were super excited about. We had one that worked for a while, which we lost rights to. Blue River had it in a bag, and we did too. And since then, we've gone to products that my marketing slogan for them is, well, they're better than nothing, right? And it's not a ringing endorsement for most of the products that we've had available to put on certified organic seed corn. And to me, this project that Brett has developed and the intensity and scientific background that he brings to it is really exciting for organic farmers, because I think already this year, with the rigor of the data, we're starting to see, yeah, you know what, there really are some things out there that are going to make a big difference for organic farmers, and it won't just be in corn, it'll be in other crops as well. And hey, not only that, this method of studying and understanding ground cover is going to have applications for hybrid development as well. So Jake is licking his chops to be able to start to choose hybrids based on data that tells him, you know what, here's two brand new 104 days. The genetic originator data shows that they're both good yielding and good standing and have good leaf disease resistance, etc. But this one gets to canopy 2 days before that one. Well, now we know which hybrid we're going to launch, right? Because for organic farmers, that getting to canopy earlier matters so much, as you know, and I don't need to lecture you about that. So I'm really excited about this project. You know, I wish in year one we had all the answers, but really at the end of year one, we've got a lot more questions. But we've learned a lot, and this is going to be a pretty big deal for us and for our customers going forward. And I want to thank Brett for all the work that he's put into it. So I'll stop there.
Thank you, Mac. Jake, anything you want to comment on?
You know, I'll just say, you know, this is year one, and as Max said, we're ending it probably with more questions than we started with, but we're also learning a lot. And one thing we did learn, we goofed a little bit this year on this first year, is, you know, we used Cruiser Max as our baseline treatment that we see on a vast majority of conventional corn in the marketplace. One thing we did forget to do this year was have a true naked seed in here as a check as well. So that's definitely going forward something that we learn from it, and we're not going to overlook that next year. And then to Breck's point, yeah, this is a tool that we're going to start to use more and more, even on just our basic research trials, to really get a better understanding of which hybrids are in fact coming out of the ground faster, getting to canopy quicker. You know, I'll talk about it here in a little bit in my presentation, but you know, that speed to canopy and emergence is number one on our selection trial, or our selection criteria here. But no, this is definitely some work that we're doing that's exciting for us, and being able to bring more information to the customers, to the growers, is very, very valuable.
Thanks, Jake. And so just to add to that, then I think Ty, I found the questions, and I'll address those here real quick. So when we think about 25, Mac mentioned other crops. We're going to take Trusted Insights and incorporate soybeans. And then down the road, I mean, there's lots of products or lots of seed that we sell that we think could benefit from this. And so we'll continue to bring those into the fold. And then secondly, and Jake mentioned this as well, when we're out there in multiple states doing this corn hybrid pre-commercial work to figure out what hybrids do we want to put in your hands as a customer, we think there's enormous utility in borrowing from some of the techniques we used on Trusted Insights, i.e. the drone imagery, and really characterizing these hybrids. Not only how quickly do they emerge, but get to canopy. And we think there's a lot of value we can create there as well. So the plan is we're going to start to cascade that work over some of our traditional pre-commercial hybrid trial work, so we can better characterize for you which hybrids are truly getting out of the ground quicker and getting to canopy. So I can see two questions. First one, for treatment 6 rows wide with 4 harvests for data, wondering, so this is a really good question. I think the genesis of it is you get the hybrids that tend to canopy different. For us, the concern was these treatments. I mean, these are microbials, and they don't necessarily stay where you want them. Some of them move. And so we had to account for that. And so 4-row plots, 40-foot long, and we took data off the middle 2 rows. And so a row that's being collected for data, there's 2 rows between that and the next row next to it that we're collecting for data. So we forced that separation for the purposes of the treatments themselves is what we were thinking. But to this gentleman's question, the fact that you get different shading is an interesting one. Now, did we address that in total? Not sure, but I'm got to believe it helped, particularly when you think about emergence to canopy. Second question, do you have data showing hybrid speed to canopy without any treatment? So Jake addressed this. That was a miss on our part. We did not have any naked seed in this treatment, in this study, and that's my bad. So going forward, we will make sure we have some truly untreated, i.e. naked seed in the study. Ty, are there any more questions, or are those the only 2?
I got one more on here. Do you see seed vigor enhancement, any effect on weed suppression?
I would say based on the work we did here, we weren't looking at that. This was actually conventionally farmed fields where they had pre-emerge herbicide, and we were trying to take that out of the equation. And so we can't speak to that relative to this work. Now, Mac, I don't know if you care to venture a comment, or Jake.
I'll just jump in and say, yeah, absolutely. We did not measure weed suppression in this study, so that wasn't part of it. I think it doesn't seem like a stretch to say that the faster emerging that you have a corn or a soybean plant, and the faster that you get ground cover from that corn or soybean plant, the better the weed suppression is going to be. But this study was not designed to prove or disprove that.
Thanks, Mac. All right, let's keep moving. We got 9 minutes
and then we
left.
got another question that came in here in the chat. Can we also test for aflatoxins as well?
That's a great suggestion. So if I understand the question, once the corn is harvested, test for aflatoxin and see if that correlates back to speed to canopy, the treatments. Great question. And that's frankly some of the feedback we're looking for. The answer is no, we didn't do that. We didn't even consider that. But as we move forward, it wouldn't be that difficult to incorporate a test like that in the study. So we'll take a note.
I think that's actually a great idea, because there are some of these biologicals are represented to have an effect on the development of mycotoxins in the grain. And so great shout. I don't know who said that, but yeah, that would be a future parameter for the study to take into account. And again, another reason to do this on other species, things like oats, barley, wheat, where we can start to measure some of those things as well. So good shout.
And if others have ideas, please put them forth. I can't commit to testing all of them, but this is one that would be a really easy add-on, and I think create a fair amount of value.
I guess another thing is, do you see conventional farmers adopting Rise Up Plus BioGuard versus traditional seed treatments, like on all the attention on neonicotinoids and everything like that? Do you see this as a potential opportunity for that?
Excellent question. It's a great segue to this slide. The short answer is yes, we do. And so part of the work that we did, and it's nested within the data I just showed you. There's a few of these, the Rise Up Plus BioGuard, there's a few of those. And there's a concoction in there that's somewhat representative, but it's not one and the same. So we believe that if we can put in traditional non-GMO conventional growers' hands tools that perform as well as a traditional fungicide insecticide like Cruisomax that don't have neonics, there will be demand for that. And so again, we think that's part of our role at Albert Lea Seed House. This data represents that, and I clipped this right out of one of our seed guides. So we went to market this year with an option, and it's really, I think, the first time we've done something like this, where growers could buy corn hybrids, and there's a select few, and they're in the lower right-hand corner of the Rise Up left-hand of the side of the screen. So we took a handful of hybrids and we let growers have until December 1st to place orders for Rise Up plus BioGuard. And BioGuard is an OMRI certified with restrictions. Okay. So we're trying to find OMRI certified without. That's a really, really tall task. In fact, of the 10 treatments I just showed you, there's only 2 that fit that bill, and one of them we're already using, which is our Rise Up. And so it's a really short list. So this BioGuard is a portfolio of compounds, advanced microbials that are in the OMRI certified with restrictions. Okay, so that creates a little bit of a hurdle for us and for you, and that's why we had what I'm calling a limited run, where growers could place orders for a portfolio of hybrids. We'll get them treated, we'll get them in your hands, and this data represents that information. So on the right-hand side of the screen, that bar chart that has bars going up and going down, that's called a piano key chart. And what that does is it shows you each bar is a test of Rise Up plus BioGuard compared to a traditional fungicide insecticide. And I believe it was Cruiser Max. And so it's the difference between those two. And so you see bars going down, you see parts in that horizontal axis where there's no bars because the difference was 0. And you see bars going up. And what this shows, based on 14 locations in 22 and 23, 60% of the time, BioGuard produced a yield response. Okay. Now, whenever you're looking at data, this is your public service announcement. Whenever you're looking at data, whether it's ours or anybody else's, there's a % win rate that is believable, and then there's % win rates that should make you really scratch your head. And I'm here to tell you, if you're 70% or higher, you're in rare air. 60% is actually pretty darn good. Anything 80% or higher, I'd be a little suspicious. And let's face it, not every product wins all the time, because we, as farmers, we play in an outdoor sport, and Mother Nature is ultimately the referee, and she has a lot to say about how these products perform. So 60% win rate, and then the bar chart to the right, that is the net difference in, actually it's the absolute yield of both the fungicide, insecticide, and the Rise Up, and there's really only about a bushel difference. Okay, this is the data we put in our yield and our seed guides to allow farmers to make decisions. I would actually invite those of you that have interest, although we closed the order period. If you still have interest, if you reach out to us today, by the end of the day, we'll work hard to put you into some BioGuard if it's something you want to try. So this next slide, again, we're sticking with the BioGuard now. And someone asked about the untreated check or naked seed. This data actually has, now this isn't ours, this is again back to the work that Albaugh did. When you take the bar chart on the left, again, it's a piano key chart, naked seed, which is the UTC yellow, untreated check yellow. That's the delta, and all of those are down, okay, which shouldn't surprise you. And then to the right, the blue bars would be the BioGuard. So you're clearly seeing a separation when it's naked seed and BioGuard to the tune of about 7 bushels, okay? And this again was work done in 22, 23. To the right, you just see the summary in terms of total yield of all those treatments. You can see the yield difference there. Again, about that 7 bushel. And then the bar chart to the bottom right is your stand count. So we did, as you would expect, retain about 800 seeds, 600 to 800 seeds, better emergence through this treatment. Sticking with the same set of data, this is a few of those locations, and there's only 7, where the researcher inoculated those fields with Pythium, and that's something that you can do if you have the right expertise. You can actually inoculate the soil with some of these pathogens. In this case, it's Pythium. Untreated check again is naked seed, okay, and the BioGuard treatment 17.5 bushel when it's inoculated with Pythium. So we're really trying to get at the pathogen that BioGuard protects against, or one of them is Pythium. So we're trying to really expose that. And you can see a fairly healthy yield response in that case. And then your seed count, your stand count actually goes up 1,500, 1,600 seeds. So this is my last slide. So we took that same work, okay, and we replicated it to a degree. We didn't inoculate with pithy, but we replicated the fungicide insecticide against BioGuard in a lot of the pre-commercial hybrid trials that Jake oversees. And this is what you see here. Again, the peyote key chart on the left. This is 49 different tests across 5 hybrids in 12 states this year. Okay, so a fairly broad area. 49 replications is that's saying something. You're really getting anytime you get north of 30, you're really statistically building a fairly strong data package. And you can see our win rate was 51%. Okay, and then the overall difference in yield is virtually identical to what I showed you from the work that Alba did 2 years prior to when we tested it. And so a couple things jump out at me on this slide. First of all, when you think about trusted insights, think about us doing work to maybe validate what manufacturers are finding, but doing it within our system. That came through in spades. What Alba's finding is the same thing we're finding, and that feels really good. Secondly, and Jake, I'm going to ask you to jump in here real quick, and we're at time, so let's make this succinct. 5 hybrids, 12 states, 24 or 49 replications, a fairly wide geography. You saw some interesting trends when we parsed the data. Can you comment on that to the group?
Yeah. So, you mentioned we had 5 hybrids ranging from a 95-day up to a 109-day in this. That's in this data here. So where we saw the biggest difference, the right-hand side of that first bar chart there, was in northern locations. As we got into central and northern Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, parts of Michigan, that's where we saw the biggest separation in favor of the Rise Up Plus BioGuard over the fungicide insecticide. And some of the weather-related issues there was wet and cold, pretty much all through the month of May. And then where we saw more of a bringing it closer to that center of the bar chart where things evened out was kind of right where I'm sitting here in Albert Lea, Minnesota, that I-90 corridor down to about Highway 18 in Iowa. That corridor going across the Corn Belt is where we saw things just kind of even up. And then the further south we went, where soils got warmer, maybe a little less rain to begin with, that's where, just your traditional fungicide, insecticide, kind of stayed on top.
All right. We did get a request to test this on, if it's not in the works, silage yield results and everything. So I'll add that to the list. And then while I'm transitioning over and everything, thank you, Brett, for your presentation and everything. If anyone has any more questions or anything that didn't get a chance, I'm sure Brett would be more than willing to field those via email. And then so while I'm doing that, Mac, I see your hand up. You want to?
Yeah, go ahead and switch slide decks. I just want to point out that the comparison here is between Rise Up Plus BioGuard and a fungicide insecticide package. Again, we missed there having a untreated seed in that trial would have been the valid comparison for organic farmers, obviously, because a fungicide insecticide package is not an option. So this coming year, if we do this again, we'll have naked seed in there. The other thing I wanted to point out is we are committed to developing environmentally safe solutions. And so we are offering Rise Up Plus BioGuard both to our organic customers and also to our conventional customers. I don't know if any of our conventional customers are going to order any corn this year with Rise Up Plus BioGuard, but I can tell you, I firmly believe within 10 years, I think a lot of conventional corn is going to be planted that's treated with biologicals rather than hard chemistry.